Welcome back to the deep dive. I actually want to start today with a question that is probably going to annoy you. It certainly annoyed me when I asked it of myself this morning.
Well, that's a slightly dangerous way to start.
Right. I know, but here it is. How many quote unquote solutions are currently sitting on your phone or your bookshelf right now?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that hits close to home. The modern arsenal of self-improvement.
Exactly. It's an absolute arsenal. I did a personal inventory this morning. I have a meditation app that sends me notifications that I just completely ignore.
Wow.
I have a calorie tracker I haven't opened in probably 3 weeks. I have a literal stack of books on my nightstand about atomic this and highly effective that. And I have a to-do list that is color-coded, prioritized, and frankly, it is just beautiful to look at.
But it's not actually doing anything.
No. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night, and I suspect it keeps a lot of our listeners up too. Despite all the tools, despite this whole optimize your life, hack your morning culture, I go to bed feeling like the needle hasn't actually moved at all. The day was busy, boxes were checked, but the actual life feels exactly the same as it did 6 months ago. It's that gnawing frustration of stagnant self-improvement. Why is that? Why do we have these perfect systems for our days, but we feel like we're losing the years?
It is the universal frustration of our time, honestly. We are drowning in tactics. We have never, ever had more tactics available to us, but we are absolutely starving for architecture.
Architecture. That is the key word for today. We are doing a deep dive into part 3 of The Architect of Life. Specifically, we are tackling chapters Q through T. And look, I have read a lot of this stuff. Usually it's, drink more water or make your bed. This book, the source material is different. This is dense. It's almost geometric.
It is geometric. The author refers to this section as metamatics.
Mesomatic.
Right. The algebra of becoming. It is not about fixing a leaky faucet in your life. It's about looking at the blueprints of the house and realizing the foundation is poured wrong.
Metamatics. It sounds incredibly intimidating when you first hear it.
It can be a little overwhelming at first glance, but think of it like this. Most productivity advice is like trying to fix a car engine by just hitting it with a wrench.
Just brute force.
Brute force. Exactly.
Right.
What we're looking at today is the physics behind why the engine works in the first place. It's about seeing the code behind the matrix. And the promise of these chapters is that if you understand the geometry, the specific shapes and ratios of how a life is actually built, you stop forcing change. Change becomes the inevitable output of the system you design.
The inevitable output. I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
I want to get to a place where I'm not just white-knuckling my way through personal growth. So let's map this out for everyone listening, because we are going to be swimming in the deep end today. We have 4 main pillars, right?
Correct. 4 pillars that build on each other sequentially. First, we have chapter Q. This is about the fractal nature of life. We're going to completely shatter the idea that life is a linear timeline and look at it as a repeating pattern. This is where we discover why your week, the mesoscale, is the secret leverage point you have been ignoring.
And then we move to chapter R, the root square chart.
Yes, the visual heart of the whole system. This flips everything you know about goal setting completely upside down. We're going to talk about building from the fruits up, not the root down. This is where we get into the nuts and the seeds and soil.
Then chapter T, which honestly, it completely blew my mind, the synthesis operator. It involves this weird little symbol in the text, a circled plus sign.
The math of magic.
Uh-huh.
It explains why 1 + 1 rarely equals 2 in human transformation. It explains why you can do all the right things and get 0 results until suddenly you get all the results at once.
And finally, chapter S, the inversion kick. This is the rhythm, the heartbeat of the whole thing. It's how you avoid burning out while building this massive internal structure.
It's the dance between the architect and the builder.
Okay, let's jump right in. Chapter Q, the fractal nature of life. The book opens this section with a pretty bold statement. It says, time is not a line, it is a spiral of self-similarity. Now, I'm not a geometry nerd. When I hear fractal, I think of those trippy, colorful screensavers from the 90s. What are we actually talking about here?
A fractal is simply a pattern that repeats at every scale. Think of a coastline. If you look at a coastline from a satellite, say, the coast of Norway, it looks jagged, right?
Sure. Lots of inlets and peninsulas. Very rough.
Right. Now, imagine you jump out of that satellite and parachute down to a single cliff on that exact same coast.
Yeah.
What does the cliff look like?
It's jagged, rocks sticking out everywhere.
Now, take a magnifying glass and look at a single pebble resting on that cliff.
It's also jagged.
Exactly. The pattern that jaggedness holds true, whether you are looking at the massive scale of 1,000 miles or the microscopic scale of 1 inch. The source material argues that your life operates the exact same way. How you handle a minor crisis at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday is fractally similar to how you handle a massive crisis in your career over a decade.
How you do one thing is how you do everything. We hear that quote tossed around a lot, usually by life coaches on Instagram, but this actually gives it a firm mathematical basis.
It does. It grounds it in reality. And the text breaks this down into 4 specific scales of human experience. We need to define these because they are the vocabulary for the rest of our discussion. The micro, the meso, the macro, and the meta.
Let's define those for the listener right now.
The micro is the daily scale. This is the atomic level of your life. It is your wake time. It's the decision to hit the snooze button or not. It's the decision to eat the donut or the eggs. It is the moment to moment now.
Okay, the atoms of life.
Then you have the meso. This is the weekly scale. It is the aggregation of those daily atoms into a coherent rhythm. Then macro, which is usually defined as quarterly, about 13 weeks. This is where you actually start to spot trends. And finally, meta, the life arc, the decades.
The book uses this analogy that I found so incredibly helpful for understanding this. The ant and the colony. Can we unpack that?
It's a beautiful way to understand the disconnect between our daily grind and our ultimate life goals. I want you to imagine that you are an ant.
Okay, I'm an ant. I'm walking in the dirt carrying a leaf.
You are operating strictly at the micro scale. Your entire observable world is that rock in front of you, that leaf on your back, and the chemical pheromone trail you are following. Do you have any idea that you are actually building a complex colony that regulates the temperature of the soil?
No clue whatsoever. I'm just trying not to get squished by a shoe.
Right. And do you know that the colony itself is part of a massive forest ecosystem that literally affects the weather patterns of the region?
Definitely not. That is way above my pay grade as an ant.
That is the fundamental human condition. You are the ant. You are just trying to get through your Tuesday afternoon marketing meeting. You aren't thinking about the metabolism of your life arc. You are operating entirely at the micro. But if you zoom out to the mesoscale, you see the colony. You see patterns emerging. You see that all those individual ant movements create a functional structure.
And if you zoom out again, you see the forest.
The macro, the ecosystem.
Yeah.
The individual ant is completely unaware that the forest exists, yet its micro-actions are the absolute only thing creating that macro reality.
This hits so close to home for me because I feel like I spend 99% of my life as the ant. I am just constantly reacting to stimuli. Email comes in, I answer the email, I feel hungry, I eat a sandwich, I get a text, I reply. I am rarely, if ever, looking at the colony, let alone the forest.
And that is exactly where the trap lies for most people. The text makes this brilliant argument that we try to change our lives at the entirely wrong scales. We tend to focus exclusively on the extremes.
The macro and the micro.
Right. Think about New Year's resolutions. That is a massive macro intervention. You say, this year I am going to get in the best shape of my life. That is a huge, vague, strategic goal.
Or we swing the other way and go fully micro. We say, I am going to have the absolute perfect morning routine starting tomorrow. 5 a.m., ice bath, meditate for an hour, journal in my leather-bound book.
And what happens?
I do it for exactly 3 days. Then on Thursday, I oversleep because I was up late working. I feel like a total failure, and I quit the whole thing.
Exactly. The micro is far too volatile. One bad night of sleep, one flat tire on your commute, one sick kid, and the micro falls apart completely. It's way too fragile to build a life strategy on. But the macro is too slow. If you wait a whole quarter to see if your life is working, you have just lost 3 months of your life to bad data.
So the Goldilocks zone, the sweet spot, is the meso. The week?
The week is the ultimate leverage point. The text actually calls it the unit of sustained becoming. A week is long enough to survive a bad day. If you totally bomb on Tuesday, you can recover by Friday and still have a statistically winning week. But it's short enough that you can course correct before you lose the entire year.
It's forgiving. It has some slack built into it.
It is resilient. And this brings us to the weekly equation from the text. The formula is sum of daily routines multiplied by recovery ratio.
I want to stop right there on recovery ratio because reading this part felt like a personal attack. The text talks about the extreme danger of the 7-to-0 ratio.
The ultimate hustle culture trap. 7 days of pure intensity, 0 days of recovery.
Which feels like exactly what we are supposed to do. If you listen to modern motivation, it's all no days off, grind while they sleep, right?
But look at the sheer mathematics of it. If you multiply your massive effort by a recovery ratio of 0, what is the mathematical result?
It's 0. Anything multiplied by 0 is 0.
You get a weekly crash. The entire structure collapses under its own weight. You might grind perfectly from Monday through Friday, but if you do not bake the recovery into the formula, the mesostructure fails. And because life is fractal, like we established, a broken week fractals upward into a broken quarter, which fractals upward into a broken life.
That is deeply terrifying, but also incredibly clarifying. If my week is chaotic, my life is chaotic. There is no magic future where my life is peaceful if my current week is a disaster.
You cannot build a peaceful cathedral out of chaotic, crumbling bricks. The inputs dictate the structure.
So the main takeaway from Chapter Q is stop obsessing over the perfect day. The perfect day is a myth. And stop obsessing over the 5-year plan because you can't control it. Win the week. Design a week that has a sustainable rhythm work and rest and just repeat that unit.
Precisely. If you stabilize the meso, the macro absolutely takes care of itself. It becomes inevitable.
Okay, so we have firmly established that the week is our container, that is the battlefield. Now we need to figure out what exactly we are putting inside that container. And this brings us to Chapter R and the root square chart.
Chapter R. This is where we start drawing the blueprints.
I want to try to help the listener visualize this. Obviously, we are an audio medium, but try to picture this in your mind with us. Imagine a large square, but it is not just a blank box. It is a target. It has concentric layers moving inward.
Think of it like a mandala, or maybe a fortress with different defensive walls. We are moving conceptually from the outside in.
The text calls this the architecture of emergence. Why is it structured outside in? Usually when I sit down to set goals, I start right at the center. I say, I want to be a CEO, or I want to be financially independent.
That is the fundamental error of modern goal setting. The center of the square, the root, is the final outcome. The text argues that you cannot actually do an outcome. You cannot simply be a CEO today. You cannot be fit right now. Those are states of being that emerge as a byproduct of other actions.
So if I cannot touch the center of my own life, where am I supposed to start?
You start at the outermost rim, the crest. The text labels this outer layer as the 36 fruits.
36. That is a very specific, rigid number.
It is a deliberate constraint. You only have so much bandwidth as a human being. These fruits are your atomic habits. They are the absolute, irreducible actions that you can actually physically execute in reality.
Give us some concrete examples of a fruit versus a root, just to ground this.
A root might be a loving marriage. Now, you cannot do a loving marriage at 6 p.m. on a random Tuesday. It's too abstract.
Okay.
But you can do the fruit, which might be put my phone in a drawer for 1 hour during dinner.
Okay, I see. A root might be financial freedom. A fruit is auto-transfer $50 to my savings account every Friday.
Exactly. The fruits are totally binary. Did you put the phone in the drawer or did you not? Did you transfer the $50 or did you not? They are the only things in this entire chart that are under your direct, immediate control. So you populate this outer rim with these tiny, highly specific actions. Okay, so we have 36 of these fruits, circling the wagons on the outside of the square. What happens is we move one layer inward. We move into the 12 leaves. This is where grouping and synergy happen. The text dictates that every 3 fruits cluster together to form exactly one leaf. A leaf is defined as a functional state or capability.
Can you walk us through a specific cluster? How do 3 actions become a capability?
Let's take the capability of active learning. To have the leaf of learning, you might need 3 highly specific fruits. Fruit A could be read 10 pages of a nonfiction book daily. Fruit B is highlight the key concepts with a marker. Fruit C is write a 3-sentence summary in a notebook.
Okay, those are all binary. I can check those off.
Right. If you repeatedly do those 3 fruits together, the leaf of active learning begins to grow. You don't try to do the leaf directly, you do the fruits, and the leaf appears as a consequence.
I see. The leaf is just the natural result of those specific fruits interacting with each other.
Correct. And then we move inward again. Those 12 leaves group together into 4 branches.
These are the massive, weight-bearing pillars of your life.
The text categorizes these 4 branches as competence, which is your professional skill and execution. Connectivity, which represents your relationships and network. Character, which is your internal state. Your ethics, your virtues. And contribution, which is your legacy and your impact on the broader world.
And finally, when those 4 branches meet in the dead center.
The root, the emergent identity, the actualized self.
The analogy that really clicked for me while reading this was the forest. We talked about ants earlier, but let's talk about trees because it maps perfectly to this outside-in concept.
It is the perfect metaphor for this architecture. If you decide you want a forest, you don't go out and try to build trees. You can't take hammers and nails, slap some wood together, glue some green paper leaves on it, and call it a tree.
Well, you could, but that's a fake tree. It's a prop.
It is a prop. And sadly, a lot of people have prop lives. They look incredibly successful on Instagram, they have the cars and the titles, but there's absolutely no root system underneath it. To build a real forest, a real life, you plant seeds. Those are the fruits. You water them. You ensure the soil is nutrient-rich. If you tend the fruits diligently, the leaves sprout. If the leaves sprout, the branches strengthen. And if the branches strengthen, the forest, the root, is an absolute inevitability.
That reframing honestly takes so much pressure off. I don't have to wake up every morning and stress myself out asking, am I a success today? I just have to wake up and say, did I water the seeds? Did I do the 36 fruits?
It shifts your entire psychological focus from a constant state of anxiety about the outcome to a calm fidelity to the daily process.
Yeah.
But there is a mathematical kicker in this chapter that we absolutely need to discuss, the fourth quarter principle.
Yes, this part made me stop reading and literally just stare at the wall for a minute. Break down the math for us.
It is simple arithmetic, but it's profound philosophy. You have 4 branches: confidence, connectivity, character, contribution. 4 times 25% equals exactly 100%.
Okay, I'm tracking with the math.
The implication of that math is that there is no magic 5th element. There is no mysterious missing piece of the puzzle. If you build those 4 branches fully, if they are robust and healthy, the root must exist. It is a mathematical inevitability. It is not a wish. It's not based on luck. It's physics.
Why is that realization so deeply important for the reader?
Because of imposter syndrome. Think
Yeah.
about it. Imposter syndrome lives entirely in the gap. It lives in that vague, shadowy feeling of, I'm missing something, or I'm just pretending, or I'm not really this person I claim to be. The root square chart closes that gap with hard, objective evidence. If you have the competence, the connectivity, the character, and the contribution, you are the thing. You do not need anyone's permission.
You can physically look at your chart and say, the math proves I am this person.
Exactly. You are looking at the data of your own life. You say, I did the fruits, the leaves are green, the branches are strong. Therefore, the root is real. It devolves all that emotional insecurity with structural proof.
But before we all rush out and start planting these seeds, the text gives us a pretty severe warning. We can't just plant random seeds we find on the ground. It talks about this concept of silhouette allocation.
Or desire mapping. This is crucial because you can easily spend decades climbing the completely wrong mountain. You can meticulously build a route that looks incredibly impressive to your neighbors, but feels like an absolute prison to you.
Right. If your defined route is wealthy CEO, but the fruits required to actually get there involve sleep 4 hours a night, miss your kids' soccer games, and eat fast food because of stress, what have you actually built at the end of the day?
You have built a custom-designed cage. Silhouette allocation forces you to map the experiential quality of the route first before you choose a single fruit. You don't just label the sender success, you have to define the silhouette of that success. Does it feel like autonomy? Does it feel like generosity? Does it feel like calm?
So if my desired end state is calm, I literally cannot plant hustle fruits on the outside ring.
Exactly. You have to reverse engineer the seeds from the feeling you want to eventually harvest. If you want to harvest apples, you have to stop planting onions.
That seems so incredibly obvious when you say it out loud, but man, how many of us are out in the field planting onions every single day and praying for apples?
Almost everyone. It is the default state of modern society. We adopt the fruits of the people we see online without asking if we actually want the root they have.
Okay, so we have designed the chart, we mapped our silhouette, we have our 36 carefully chosen fruits. Now we need to understand how these things actually combine to create change, and this is where the text gets weirdly scientific, almost like a chemistry textbook. Chapter T introduces the synthesis operator.
The circled plus sign.
I have to be completely honest with you. When I first saw this symbol in the text, my eyes just glazed right over. I thought, oh great, we are trying to turn self-help into calculus now. Why do we need a special symbol? Why can't we just use a regular plus sign like normal people?
Because in the physics of deep human transformation, regular addition is actually a lie. Regular addition keeps things in the exact same state of matter. If I have a pile of red bricks and I add 50 more red bricks to it, what do I have?
You just have a bigger pile of red bricks.
Right, same exact substance, just more volume. But synthesis represented by that circled plus sign transforms the components into something qualitatively different from the parts.
The hydrogen and oxygen analogy was the absolute best explanation for this. I want to spend some time here.
It is the classic scientific example of emergence. Think about hydrogen. It is a gas. It is highly, highly flammable. Think about the Hindenburg
It's
disasters.
pure explosion.
Now think about oxygen. It is also a gas. And fire absolutely loves it. Fire requires it to burn.
So you have two separate gases that basically love explosions and fire.
If you just add them, if you use a regular plus sign and mix them in a steel tank without chemically bonding them, you just get a highly dangerous explosive gas mixture. But if you synthesize them chemically, H2O, what happens?
You get water.
And what does water do to fire?
It puts it out instantly.
That is the miracle of emergence. The property of wetness, the ability to extinguish a flame, does not exist anywhere in hydrogen. It does not exist anywhere in oxygen. It emerges entirely from the synthesis of the two. It is a completely new state of matter that transcends its parts.
So how does this chemistry lesson apply to my daily habits? To the root square chart we just built.
The formula provided in the text is fruit 1 synthesized with fruit 2, it's synthesized with fruit 3 equals leaf. A new capability isn't just doing 3 habits side by side like a checklist. It is the new superpower that emerges when those habits finally interact and bond.
Let's use the jazz musician example from the book. I thought this was just a brilliant way to ground it.
It's perfect for this. Imagine you want to be a master jazz improviser. That is the leaf you want to grow. You need 3 specific fruits to get there. Fruit 1 is practicing scales. That's pure mechanical, technical repetition. Fruit 2 is active listening. That's training your ear to hear what the drummer and the bassist are doing in real time. Fruit 3 is music theory, understanding the actual math of the chord progressions.
Okay, I have my 3 fruits.
If you just add them up, you practice your scales alone in a room for an hour, then you read a textbook on theory for an hour, then you silently listen to a Miles Davis record for an hour. You are not an improviser. You are just a robot who knows a bunch of separate musical facts.
You are a pile of musical bricks.
Exactly. You're just a bigger pile of bricks. But if you synthesize them, if you use your scales while listening to the drummer, while applying the chord theory in real time on a stage, what happens?
Improv happens. The magic happens.
The music happens. It flows. You create something entirely new that did not exist in the raw scales or the theory books. That is synthesis. You cannot add your way to improvisation. You have to synthesize the raw basics until the new capability emerges on its own.
And the text mentions threshold dynamics here, this idea that this whole process is non-linear. It's not a smooth curve.
This is the click. Because synthesis is essentially a chemical reaction, it requires a minimum threshold of energy to ignite. You can't bake a cake in a room temperature oven. You put the batter in and nothing happens. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. And then you turn the heat up, you hit the threshold, and click, it becomes cake.
This perfectly explains why we so often feel like we are completely failing right before we suddenly succeed.
Yes, you are gathering the hydrogen. You are gathering the oxygen. You are doing the work. But you just haven't hit the ignition spark yet. If you have great technical skill, let's say that's fruit 1 and a great work ethic, fruit 2, but you have absolutely 0 communication skills, fruit 3, you don't get a 2 out of 3 result in your career.
You don't get mostly water.
No, you get a broken team. You get fired.
Huh.
You need all the required components present at a sufficient threshold for the synthesis to actually ignite and create the leaf.
But there is really good news here, too. The text calls it the ratchet effect.
Oh, this is vital. Once synthesis happens, once you finally make the water, it is very, very hard to turn it back into gas. True learning, true emergence is irreversible. Once you learn to ride a bicycle, which is the synthesis of balance, pedaling, and steering, you just have it. You can't unlearn how to ride a bike.
That is so incredibly hopeful to me. It means the struggle, the grinding phase before the click isn't wasted time. You are building permanent equity in your own nervous system.
You are building the permanent conditions for emergence.
Okay, so we are actively building this complex structure. We are synthesizing our habits into capabilities. But there is a massive danger lurking here. We can get so obsessed with optimizing the chart that we forget to actually live our lives. Or, conversely, we can get so busy grinding that we completely neglect the chart. And this brings us to Chapter S and the inversion kick.
This is the operating system for the entire machine. The text identifies 2 completely distinct modes of human being, the iterator and the delineator.
I feel like everyone listening right now is going to instantly, painfully identify with one of these 2 profiles. I know I certainly did. Let's define them clearly.
The iterator is content first. This is the doer, the grinder, the coder staring at the screen, the person in the gym lifting the heavy weight until they sweat. The iterator is all about personal agency, brute effort, and repetition.
The just do it mentality, head down, push forward.
Exactly. Then you have the opposite, the delineator. This is context first. The architect,
Yeah.
the planner, the person organizing the color-coded Notion template, the person researching and buying all the best running gear. The delineator is all about setting constraints and designing the perfect environment.
Okay, full confession time on the podcast. I am a chronic pathological delineator.
A productivity porn trap.
Oh, 100%. It's embarrassing. I will literally spend 3 hours finding the absolute perfect minimalist font for my daily to-do list.
What?
I will research the biomechanics of the best running shoes for a solid week. I will set up the most beautiful interconnected digital system you have ever seen in your life. And then I am too mentally exhausted to actually go for the run.
You have built a beautiful, pristine temple with absolutely no worshipers inside. That is the classic delineator trap. You confuse the act of planning the work with the act of doing the work. You get the dopamine hit of organizing without actually moving the needle.
It feels like work, but it's not. But the iterator has major issues too, right? It's not like they have it all figured out.
The iterator is the hamster on the wheel. They are working incredibly hard, sweating bullets. But the system they are running in is fundamentally broken. They are coding for 12 hours straight, but because they have no file structure or architecture, the code is a tangled mess of spaghetti. They are lifting weights every single day, but because they have no periodized program, they tear a rotator cuff. The iterator burns out, the delineator procrastinates.
So what is the answer? How do we fix this? The text calls it the inversion kick.
The kick is the rhythmic intentional switch between the two modes. You cannot be both an iterator and a delineator at the exact same time. It's cognitively impossible. You must alternate.
It's like breathing, inhale, exhale. You can't do both simultaneously.
That is the perfect analogy. The delineator mode is the inhale. You pause, you take in oxygen, you look at the map, you plan, you structure your environment. The iterator mode is the exhale. You push, you execute, you act, you expend energy into the world. You cannot inhale forever. You will pass out. And you cannot exhale forever. You will die.
So practically speaking, what does a kick actually look like in a normal person's week?
It looks like clearing the cache on your browser. Let's say you are writing a book. Monday through Thursday, you are a pure iterator. You write. You do not worry about the font. You do not worry about the chapter order. You do not edit. You just generate raw words.
Pure, unfiltered grind. Exhale.
Then Friday morning arrives. The kick. You stop writing entirely. You put down the pen. You put on the architect hat, the delineator mode. You look at what you wrote from a high level. You organize the digital files. You outline the structure for the next week. You physically clean your desk. You sharpen the pencils. You inhale.
You optimize the machine for the next run.
And then Monday morning hits. You kick back. You stop planning. You take off the architect hat and you start writing again. The kick prevents you from tunnel visioning into total burnout, and it prevents you from spiraling into endless procrastination.
It's giving yourself explicit permission to stop doing and start designing. But it also gives you a hard deadline to stop designing and get back to doing.
Exactly. It creates a sustainable rhythm. Structure, then function. Structure, then function. Over and over.
And speaking of structure becoming function, the text mentions something fascinating here. It says that the root square chart itself is alive. It's not just a static PDF you print out once and frame on your wall.
This is the concept of dynamic architecture. As you grow and synthesize, the chart must fundamentally change. When you first start practicing a new fruit, let's go back to active listening, it takes massive conscious effort. It is a box you have to aggressively remember to check every day. It is pure structure.
It feels like heavy lifting. It's work.
But eventually, after enough reps, after enough synthesis, you don't have to try anymore. You just are a good listener. You don't have to consciously try to listen any more than you have to consciously try to keep your balance on a bicycle once you know how to ride it. The rigid structure has completely dissolved into fluid function.
So what happens to that specific box on the chart?
You delete it. You permanently remove that fruit from the outer ring.
Really? But it's a good habit. Why would I take it off my tracker?
Because it is no longer a task. It has become part of your baseline firmware. Think about it. If you are still checking a box for brush your teeth at age 40, something is deeply wrong with your operating system. That should be fully automatic. The goal is to aggressively clear the chart, to free up bandwidth for new difficult things. You graduate.
Wow. And this leads us to the final, and I think probably the most Zen concept in these entire 4 chapters, dissolution.
This is the ultimate paradox of the entire book. We love our tools, we love our letter journals, our habit tracking apps, our color-coded charts, but the ultimate goal of the root square chart is to become completely unnecessary.
The map becomes the territory.
Exactly. Eventually, if you do this right, you don't do the architecture anymore. You are the architecture. You embody the principle so deeply, so completely, that the scaffolding just naturally falls away. You don't need a piece of paper to tell you who you are or what to do next. You just know.
That is just beautiful. It's not about becoming a person who is really, really good at following a chart. It's about becoming a person who doesn't need a chart at all.
That is the ultimate freedom, the dissolution of the method into pure being.
So bringing this all the way back down to earth for a minute, we have covered a massive amount of abstract philosophical and mathematical concepts today. Fractals, emergence, synthesis, roots, kicks. How does the listener driving their car right now actually apply this tomorrow morning? Chapter S gives us a very practical tool called the monthly distillation.
Right. The warning here is do not try to overhaul your entire life tonight. That's the macro trap. Start with a monthly check-in. Sit down in a quiet room with a blank piece of paper and ask yourself 3 very specific questions.
Okay, what is question number 1?
Question 1. Which fruits are now automatic? Look at your habits. If you are doing something without thinking, take it off the chart. Celebrate that synthesis, cross it out, and make space.
Make space for new growth. I love that.
Question 2. Am I currently acting as an iterator or delineator? Look honestly at your last week. Were you just blindly grinding with no direction? Or were you just endlessly planning with no actual execution? Do you need to initiate a kick?
That is a harsh but necessary reality check.
And question 3, maybe the most important one. Is my root still what I actually want? Because as you grow, as you change, your definition of success will inevitably change. Your desired silhouette will shift. The chart must evolve with you, or it becomes a prison.
That ties right back to the living map concept.
Yes. Do not be fiercely loyal to a past version of yourself that no longer exists.
Wow. Okay, let's recap this whole journey because we covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. It's dense material.
We started with the fractal week. We realized that the weekly mesoscale is our true leverage point. It is the unit of becoming. We have to stop obsessing over the day and the decade and win the week.
Then we built our root square. We learned to completely invert our goal setting. Build from the outside in, plant the 36 fruits, let them grow into the branches, and trust that the root will inevitably emerge.
Then we learned the magic of the synthesis operator. We stopped trying to just pile up more bricks and we started trying to bake the cake. We learned to look for that threshold moment, the emergent click.
And finally, we learned the inversion kick, the essential rhythm of switching back and forth between the builder and the architect, so we don't burn out on the wheel or rust out in the planning phase.
So what does this all mean? What is the core takeaway for the person listening to this right now?
It means you can finally stop beating yourself up for not being there yet. You are not a failed project. You are simply a structure currently in a state of active construction. This whole philosophy shifts the focus from just trying harder, which exhausts us, to the intelligent design of the self. You are the architect. You have the admin access to your own operating system. Stop trying to run the old buggy code harder. Start writing new code.
I absolutely love that. And I want to leave you, the listener, with this final provocative thought from the text that has been rattling around in my head all week. It says that we are not just adding skills to our resume. We are actively participating in the mathematics of consciousness organizing itself. Now, that sounds huge, almost cosmic. But look at your daily life right now. Look at your to-do list for today. Are you just blindly piling up bricks, adding more random tasks, more stress, more noise to the pile? Or are you carefully synthesizing them? Are you building a pile of rubble, or are you building a cathedral?
That is the ultimate question. Emergence is waiting for you to decide.
Find your fruits for tomorrow morning, plant them in the ground, and let the forest grow. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.